Hello everyone, this is Pico Entertainment and we are back again, and here now we have another video for you, and we're going to talk about Sony and their ongoing initiative to create their own cinematic universe around Spider-Man, the so-called Spiderverse, and whether it will actually be a success for Sony or not. Now there may be spoilers for all of the previous Spider-Man films, both by Sony and Marvel, as well as other MCU films as well, so just beware when going into this overall video. So this discussion is coming off the recent announcement that Sony will be setting up a Madam Web movie starring actress Dakota Johnson, who we all know starred in the 50 Shades of Grey movie. Now for anybody who doesn't know, Madam Web is a character that appeared in the Amazing Spider-Man comic book to issue 2010 in 1980. She appeared as an elderly mystical woman with great foresight and magical powers who advises Spider-Man through his various adventures. She was adapted in the third season of Spider-Man the Animated Series from the 1990s. Now she has been reinvented as a far younger character named Julia Carpenter, who was introduced within the Secret Wars crossover released in 1984. Now for me, in terms of interest, I have very little for a Madam Web movie. No issues if you wanted to introduce her as a supporting character for Spider-Man, which would actually make sense after Doctor Strange's involvement in No Way Home and the fallout from the multiverse. Again, the 90s animated series did this by having Doctor Strange in the first episode of that third season and then introducing Madam Web the following episode after. But for me, Madam Web doesn't really merit a standalone movie, and that's something we can really put towards all of the upcoming projects within Sonys Spiderverse. As we all know, this idea of a Sonys Spiderverse started with the huge success of Venom in 2018. Now having the origin of Spider-Man's iconic villain without Spider-Man really seemed like it was deemed for a certain flop at the time, but it managed to exceed all expectations and smash the box office, grossing over 850 million worldwide. Now this success gave Sony the confidence that they could create their own cinematic universe without the Spider-Man Tom Holland version that they have been in current unison with Marvel, of course, since Spider-Man Homecoming in 2017. So Sony of course proceeded to greenlight a Morbius movie starring Jared Leto in the lead role, which is due for release in April. A Craven the Hunter movie starring Aaron Taylor Johnson is also upcoming. We have the Madam Web project, as I mentioned before, and there have been various hints that later down the line we may also see solo adventures for the like of Black Cat and the Rhino as well. So we all knew at some point Sony would want to have all of these characters intertwining eventually, with hopefully Spider-Man involved later on down the line. But will people really be invested in these movies as they were with Venom? We have to remember, when we look at Venom, he is far more of a famous villain than both Craven and Morbius, and of course you had Tom Hardy, who is a far more of a prolific actor, so that movie did have other elements going for it as well. But I'm not sure that these characters that Sony want to introduce are really strong enough to produce the same results that they want, especially as theatres are continuing to come out of this current pandemic era. We don't even know yet how they'll be able to integrate Tom Holland's Spider-Man with these characters, since he's still set within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, coming off the ending of No Way Home, despite the fact that they did separate him from the Avengers by having his identity removed from their memories, Tom Holland is still set within that specific universe. So it's going to be far more of a stretch if you did indeed want to have the villains set within the Sonyverse crossing over to integrate with Tom Holland's Spider-Man. Now people could say, well, they could introduce a new Spider-Man, but after the major box office success of Spider-Man No Way Home, currently sitting at just over 1.7 billion worldwide, there's no way that they're going to want to disassociate ties with the Tom Holland version. So I personally feel if Sony really wants to do this and have a substantial universe where we introduce Spider-Man's villains and have them connecting with Spider-Man, it would have been far better to either move Tom Holland's version into their own universe from No Way Home, or just build these villains within the MCU and work with Marvel where they can have standalone stories with Tom Holland's Spider-Man battling these villains, and then at the same time you can still have Spider-Man team up with the Avengers later on down the line. That way you keep everything within the same continuity. It's far easier for viewers to understand. It keeps good graces with all of the audiences, and Sony can use Marvel and a connection with the MCU to prop up their own particular universe. And by staying with the MCU, that would have got people far more invested in these solo projects. What happens if Morbius flops or Craven the Hunter flops? Do you then just cancel and then go back to renegotiating for working longer with Marvel? Why go through all of that when you can just play with Marvel within their cinematic universe and then build your own standalone universe around it? It just makes far more sense and gives greater guarantee for success for all of these projects. Now, of course, I do understand that everybody wants the same success within the MCU, but if you want to achieve that level of prominence that Marvel did, you really got to assess the nature of your own characters that you're using and build a proper foundation from there. We all saw how the DCEU failed by simply rushing to attain Marvel's success instead of fully understanding the nature of their characters within their universe, and I fear that Sony and their proposed Spider-Verse may indeed suffer the same fate. Thus, using all of Spider-Man's iconic villains and very much turning them into anti-heroes, is that really a sound plan for building the whole cinematic universe? What happens if you eventually integrate them with Spider-Man? There'll be more allies in many sense rather than actual villains for him to take on, and then you've got to build more protagonists if you want to have Spider-Man team up with the likes of Morbius or Kraven the Hunter in order to take down new villains. So for me, I just think it's the wrong approach. And speaking of right now, I don't think it will garner a big success by introducing certain characters that audiences aren't really interested in terms of having their own solo installments. But we will wait and see as to what develops, and of course if there are any further news regarding the Madden Web movie, Morbius, Kraven the Hunter, or any other announcements regarding the Spider-Verse within Sony, I will of course report on it within this channel. And if we indeed have any further developments regarding Tom Holland, his version of Spider-Man, or any further developments within the MCU, I will of course report on those as well as the news happens. So those are my overall thoughts and feelings on Sony and their proposed Spider-Verse plans, recently including a Madden Web movie. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think this is a mistake, or do you actually think this is actually good, that Sony are looking to build their own separate universe away from Marvel? Do you think it would have been better if Tom Holland had crossed over to the Sonyverse, or do you feel that Sony should have really looked to work with Marvel and built all of these villains within the same Marvel Cinematic Universe, thus keeping everything within the same continuity? Which method do you think would have served the Sony Spider-Verse best overall? Let me know what you think in the comments. Please also hit and like the subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, stay safe distances, and I will see you very, very soon.